we have the potential and the opportunity to lead in the conversation around growth and development that is community-based, that is rooted in sustainable design and equitable outcomes. For a long time, there were a lot of voices not represented in the room when it came time to design. Okay, that's not the future.
We need at least one staple to hold the page together. And I think the Dream Center could be that.
Many people go their entire life with not understanding what it's like to use a bandsaw, what it's like to play an instrument, and have the opportunity to really try that. When we think about the imprint that we have on this community, we think it's going to benefit these students for life.
We have a lot of spectacular spaces, but it's when people be themselves around each other. That's just, I mean, that's a special thing anywhere in the world, in any space. And that we get to have it in this space is tremendous.
Okay, we're good. Hey, my name's Jordan Gray.
I'm Nick Rossage.
And we both work at Hanbury, just a few blocks away, an architecture firm. And this was a collection of snippets of our video footage from the last 2 years or so. And we're going to talk just briefly about why we do what we do and why we think medium like this is important in the architecture practice. Again, we won't talk too long. That's one of the reasons we do things like this. You can say less words and let this do the talking for us. But, you know, architecture practices, as we're seeing, are really evolving, and how you connect with clients, you know, it's constantly changing through renderings, other types of viz, photography, you know, and tapping into filmmaking is just another way to get that story and get that narrative out there. It's just sometimes a better way to connect than it would be just to show a drawing set. You know, there's diversity and options for how you can do this.
Yeah, we really want to highlight, instead of normally for an architecture project, it's like getting the final photography, but we've been wanting to highlight the process and the stories within. So it's kind of where we've taken it with our careers. Both of us have a background in architecture, and we've kind of gotten into this niche of the creative and videography side of things as well, to really highlight those parts of the process.
Yeah. I'm going to speak a little bit about the project that we're going to showcase next too. It's called the Dream Center. It's in Calhoun Falls, South Carolina, and it's a good example of, you know, you can start this process of documentation, you know, before a building is finished. You know, that's another big part of why we're focusing on filmmaking early on. A lot of times, you know, you work on this project for years, it gets finished, people might start to move in, then it's like, hey, let's do this photo shoot. But this whole process and interaction with clients, why you're doing it, the reason behind that, and just all these nice little details along the way, they really do get lost. So how can you step in to harness that and bring that whole entire process to the foreground instead of just the finished product? So the Dream Center represents a community center idea, again, in Calhoun Falls, kind of a rundown town in the main area. But when we met with, the leadership there and LaShawn and what she's doing, and you'll see the students that participated as a studio project at Clemson, the architecture school there. It's just how all that comes together to start fundraising early on and get the message out there. And really a lot of this video, especially the speakers, was impromptu. It was kind of walking around on the streets in the town, engaging with the community, saying, hey, what would you think if there was a space that she had designated for a community center, like how would this change your lives if this is here? What would it do for the youth, for the seniors, for everyone's what would this bring to the community you don't have now? So it was kind of taking that question, expanding on that with the video. We had an idea towards the end of it to take the renderings we were working on and put those in a VR headset, and also full-scale projection map the elevation onto the facade of this building. I'm not going to, again, talk through every detail of it since we're about to show it, but just to give some general background there.
Yeah. So LaShawn is the one who's been, lives in Calhoun Falls and bought this building on this street and has been wanting to build this community center to help revitalize the town. And so what's been cool to see, too, with this process is they're utilizing this film to help get grants to hopefully fund and build this community center moving forward.
All right, let's go ahead and roll it.
Calhoun Falls was founded in 1891, where the junction of Savannah Railroad meet the state of Georgia, which is a bridge just approximately 6 miles down the road that separate the state of South Carolina and separate the state of Georgia. The Dream Center, that center would change lives. That center will have an impact. That center would help youth become the things that they have dreamed for many years.
You got to have jobs and everything else, We had a mill right across the railroad tracks there. It closed down, and now they're tearing the building down.
We are looking at that would be an anchor downtown where they would attract multiple age groups and for multiple activities.
A lot of people, they want to see it, well, you got to get out and support it. You can't just say what we need and not come out and support.
There was a lot going on the street, but now, as you see, we're down to one hardware store and one restaurant. If we don't do something soon, the town is definitely going to die, and we don't want that. Because like I said, I ain't planning on going nowhere.
We need at least one staple to hold the page together. And I think the Dream Center could be that.
LaShawn doesn't just see a town that faces challenges. She sees a town that's ripe with promise, a blank canvas. And it is our job as the architects to help her and the community make those first brushstrokes.
Now I'm believing that there's a change coming here in this town. I believe that God is using people, amen, to come down here and to help us grow, to help us reach out to those that's in need of a lot of things and to have that impact on it. Sometimes it takes for those that fall off to come in to receive what God is about to do. I'm believing a change is on its way.
So a takeaway, I would reiterate that this is just one, example, I think, of how the architecture practice is evolving. It's the end goal isn't just to get this building built, but it's how can we make that happen? How can we get awareness out there for why we do what we do? What new tools will we have moving forward to engage with the community, engage with clients? Again, this is just one piece of that, and I think as the practice moves forward, it's thinking about things like this. I said I wasn't going to say the word AI because it's such a buzzword, but filmmaking, new tech, just harnessing that and staying on top of our game there to bring new things to the table. AI. I'm just kidding. We'd both love to geek out over longer conversations with this, so we'll be around if anyone wants to chat. Otherwise, go to Hanberry's website. You can find our names there if you want to reach out to us. I'm not going to rain business cards down or anything, but
yeah, we'll be around mingling, so if you have questions, feel free to come up to us.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, can you all hear me? Cool. Everybody's been saying how bright these lights are, and they really are incredibly bright. I'm never going to see again. My name is Matt Griffith. I'm an architect at In Situ Studio. First, I just wanted to say how amazing I think the work that Jordan and Nick are doing. I've been teaching at NC State for about 20 years, and one of my favorite things about teaching young people is seeing what they end up doing. And all the different ways that architects can see things and communicate. And I think film is certainly super powerful. So great job, Jordan and Nick. And I think we give them another round of applause. I'm super awkward at this part. We're a lot better at organizing lectures and getting up here and talking. But thankfully, my main role tonight is to thank a bunch of people. The first group of folks I want to thank, they should be down here, down front, is the cohort of folks who have come to Raleigh from all over to participate in the workshop side of Real Matter. You guys have been kind to come to a lot of the lectures, but for the full 2 weeks of Real Matter, there's a group of really talented young people studying Raleigh, looking at Raleigh, identifying things that are obviously not going well, and proposing what-if proposals of how to address them. And their work is already shaping up to be really nice, and we're excited to see where it leads by next Friday. So if y'all could stand up real quick, we like to put you on the spot every night, in case you haven't figured that out. Round of applause for these folks. The 2024 cohort. We also want to say a special thank you to two really important entities. First is King's, the venue we've been having these events in. What a fun thing it is to have architecture lectures and design lectures in a space that's normally used for concerts and music events. We had somebody one year say it's the only time they've ever given a lecture in a space where there's curse words scrawled on the bathroom walls. It has a real vibe. It's one of my favorite places in Raleigh. It's a perfect scale for this event, and we hope you guys are enjoying that. The staff here has been incredible. The bar staff especially has been incredible. We've been giving you a complimentary beer, but we hope you also, partake in more things and tip heavily. So know that there's a full-service bar back there. The other group is Meade Media. We have 35 sponsors this year for the workshop, and our co-sponsor this year, which means they gave us the most, is Meade Media. And in this case, the most looks like doing an incredible job with the AV. There's a live stream feed that looks way more pro this year than it has in previous years. Every little detail down to the lighting of the banners on either side, they've been responsible for that and have done an absolutely amazing job. After night one, when we fumbled with our dongles trying to switch computers, I also even figured out how to wire a splitter to the projector. So anyways, done an incredible job. I know Drew and Mike are both here somewhere. I can't see them, but give them a round of applause. And then my last thank you, we do have actually it's well-timed. We have 6 lecture sponsors this year. The sponsors for tonight's lecture is the Raleigh Architecture and Construction Companies. One of the real fun things for the folks at Rayco, as I call them, and In Situ Studio is that from the outside, everybody assumes we're like massive enemies, but behind the scenes, it's a big secret, we're really good friends. They do incredible work. They're one of the other critical design practices in the city. They oftentimes do work that I'm jealous of. And one of the coolest things about the workshop is that our sponsors are oftentimes some of our biggest competitors, and that says a lot about our design community here in Raleigh, that we're more collaborative than we are competitive, and so that's a really special thing. So I have the honor tonight of introducing Robbie Johnson, one of the founding principals of Raleigh Architecture, who's going to introduce our speaker tonight, Ben Meade.
Matt never misses the opportunity to talk about our competition. I do think it's important. I think it keeps all of us going, keeps all of us contributing our best on a daily basis. And we're certainly grateful that they're part of this community. And I did want to take the opportunity to thank In Situ, everyone on that team, Matt, Zach. They put in an unbelievable amount of hours on an annual basis to make this possible, to make this lecture series possible, to bring this youthful and energetic crowd to our community, and to really allow this venue as an arena for hard discussions about what's happening in our city, what should be happening in our city, what needs to be happening in our city. And so I think we owe them, nothing else, a really loud round of applause. Thank you so much. Thanks, Matt, for introducing the introducer. A little bit of an odd sequence there, but I'm happy to be up here. And then I will extend all of his thank yous to everyone involved. It's a pretty incredible event, and we all look forward to it every year. I'm here to introduce tonight's guest, Ben Meade from Alloy in Brooklyn, New York. I got to spend some time with Ben today, and it turns out we are both incredibly fast talkers, especially when we're nervous. And so if I need to slow down, please let me know, but otherwise I'm going to do my best to acclimate you with a pretty expeditious delivery here. Ben is the director of design with Alloy Development out of Brooklyn, New York. He took the train to get here. It took over 10 hours. He is very happy to be with us tonight. Alloy Development is a niche developer with an in-house architecture office. 90% of their employees went to architecture school. The other 10% have a background in construction. They are all makers and designers who care deeply about their community and their contributions to that community. I found a quote online for Ben that I thought was worth sharing to sort of tee things up for this evening. We don't just develop buildings, we strive to develop communities. Everything we do has a return to the neighborhood. Their contributions, ranging from townhomes to high-rises, are vast, including New York City's first all-electric skyscraper. And they are currently, I think, negotiating the terms to hopefully satisfy 100% of the energy demand of a 44-story building, all based on renewable energy resources. As part of developing that project, that project also includes 2 public schools, affordable housing, and ground-level retail. And to build trust through the development of this project, Alloy shared their personal cell phone numbers with hundreds of neighbors in the community as a gesture to foster trust through open communication. And Ben and his family are moving into this project. They hope their daughter will one day attend the public schools that were added to this community through this project. And I haven't said it yet, but every one of these projects you will see tonight are disarmingly beautiful projects. So I think I'll finish where I started, which is spending some time with Ben today. His passion and excitement is palpable. For the aspiring designers and seasoned professionals alike, I think it's important to stay inspired, stay aspirational. These projects matter to you and your community, and I think everything you will see tonight in Ben's presentation will get you there. So you are all in for a treat. Ben says he's very comfortable in the Carolinas because he has friends and family here, so let's not let him down there. A big round of applause to welcome him up.
Good. Oh shit, I'm talking. I swear a lot. Sorry, I'm from New York. I want to thank everyone who's been, super kind to me the last couple of days, and I got a full tour of the city with Matt this morning, and it was a little intense, but it was very hot. But I got to see some buildings I had never thought I'd be able to walk into. So some Tom Pfeiffer stuff, and really inspiring sort of urban fabric that's way different from where I'm from, and I just appreciated seeing it throughout the day. But yeah, again, thank you, and thank you, Robbie, for the introduction. Let's get into it. There's a lot to cover. Like he said, I do talk fast, and although we only have a handful of projects, there's a lot that goes into each of them. So with that, Swiss Army knife. It's kind of a personal mantra of mine, and I strive to be good at everything that we're doing collectively as a company, and that includes architecture, development, branding, visualization, brokerage, all of the stuff that it's kind of a one-stop shop, and I've been there for 13 years. A little background, I'm the senior director of design at Alloy, founder director of a small side company that my wife and I run called Maison, and then I have a little bit over 13 years of experience. And I like to include this slide. This was my thesis project that landed me the job. I'm from California originally, and New York City is a very, very long ways away. But I always had an inclination to want to move there. I wanted to swear in the streets. I wanted to yell at people. I wanted to move and walk quickly. So I took it upon myself to include a couple of things that I finished college with. And whether this was fate or manifestation, I sent this resume into Alloy. My bosses, Jared and AJ. And one on the image on the left is in Brooklyn Bridge Park, which is now one of the most famous tourist attractions and parks that we have in the city. And the other one was a tower that I proposed as my thesis that was next to Barclays Center. And as fate would have it, I ended up working in that neighborhood for the last 13 years, and I've seen projects enter my computer through Revit, through AutoCAD, and into the real world. And it's a little bit of a weird spot to be in, to think that college might get you to the place where you want to be, because life is strange. But it's cool at the same time, so I like to start with that. I took the job thinking it was just going to be an architecture gig. It was a junior designer position on ArchiNect. I sent in an application, and I was like, cool, I'm going to be a part of this weirder, 4-person small office that only produces really tiny jewel boxes of architecture. And that's how we started, but now we're in a different world and in a different time. The first project I was a part of, it was my first exposure to anything construction-wise, to be honest. I was afraid of a power drill for a long time, and still kind of am. Sorry, I'm from California and live in New York City. I don't use power tools all that much. But the company itself was kind of a beginning of a new tradition for me in how I saw architecture and development together. I like to start with these two sort of examples of what I believe are really important pieces of the industry's history. The left is the Barcelona Pavilion by Mies, and the right is Rock Center, the first phase of the now famous block in Midtown Manhattan. These two slides have a lot in common. They're really iconic. They're really beautiful pieces of architecture, but they have a lot of differences as well. Rock Center is a development run by the Rockefeller Center, and it originally had been proposed to house the Met Opera. Somewhere along the development line, something fell through, and it never became part of the process, but that was the aspiration initially. And on the left, Mies actually had a really intense sort of back and forth with the international exhibition, and he was really demanding about what he wanted the space to feel and be like. And these two projects kind of signify where we live, where it's a combination of development and architecture at the same time. And to be honest, the word developer is a bit dirty. I think that has a lot of, whether it's negative stigma or there's definitely an attitude that comes with that word, but we're doing our best because we're architects to reshape and reform the discussion about what that could be like. And through a series of projects that we've completed over the last 13 years, I think we're hitting our stride personally and professionally and understanding what we want to deliver to the places that we live in, to the people that we live next to. So typically, developers have the control over the process, and architects have control over the product. So when our company was founded, it was trying to collaborate and mesh the two sort of ideologies And what we're doing at Alloy is challenging the traditional roles of architects and the traditional roles of developers, taking the best parts of each and trying to streamline the process. So we have the capability of pivoting, acting as a Swiss Army knife, and being able to be adaptable throughout the whole run of a project, which in my experience at Alloy has been 2 years to the project I'll show you later, 10 years in the making. So there's a lot of back and forth between how things work. And the developer circle is having control of the process end to end. So sometimes that works as architects, as developers, where design and inspiration and things that we want to see in the built environment are pushing the development plan. But that also goes the other way, where we have to be real about what's actually possible, what can be funded, what we're interested in building, what the scale is. So these two things go hand in hand, and it switches meeting, like every minute through meetings that we have. It's a collective sort of experience. Everyone is in the design meeting, from interns to the CEO of the company. And we're all, sorry, that's the next slide. And we're all trying to make the best building possible, but we have to wear both hats at all times. So these two are sort of interchangeable to me as I give you all, strokes. But yeah, that's kind of the mantra that we carry throughout the office. Pulp Fiction is like an insane movie, and it's a disruptive movie that was made in the 90s by Quentin Tarantino, and it's the only real apt sort of company that we can think of, because movies take a long time to make, and Quentin Tarantino is famous for saying this is the 9th movie by Quentin Tarantino. He also has complete control of what his story is going to be, and as architects and developers, we can harness that energy that a movie maker could harness and put it into the built environment. So it's end to end. We act as the owner, the client, the developer, the architect, the builder, the broker, the manager, now that we're in the rental space, and whatever it takes to make a project important to us and to finish it the way we started. Keeping our promises is really important to us, and it's part of our daily sort of activity of following through. These hats are worn every day, all day, and it's not untypical for someone to act as each of these job titles throughout the day, in between construction meetings, design meetings, brokerage meetings. All of that stuff happens in-house. So again, it's a one-stop shop where you have to be adaptable and fluid, kind of like a Swiss Army knife, or like a platypus, which has kind of been our company sort of logo mascot the last couple of years, because it's a little bit indescribable. No one really knows how it works until you talk about it, which is what I'm trying to help you with today. But yeah. So our company's located in Brooklyn. We've been there for, I think Jared started the office there or his architecture firm in 2002. So we've seen Dumbo change a lot. And this is the list of people that work at our office. So we're 22. When I started, it was 4, so it was a lot smaller than it is today. But the main thing to look at for me is all of these majors. Almost everyone is a trained architect, and almost everyone lives in Brooklyn. And a lot of people have been here for a very long time, and they all have different roles throughout the day. So it's a really fluid sort of environment where you might be on one design thing one day, going over to site to make sure it was installed the proper way that you're doing it, and then advising people on how you would market it. And there is a fluidity to everyone's sort of day-to-day that I think is really exciting. And also, there's not one day that's the same as the next one. There's always problems to solve and people to speak to and solutions to find. So it's a really energetic and also chaotic at times, but also I think that's one of the best parts about working here is everything is a little bit on the table at all times. This is a little funny change order where Jared is signing as the owner or the contractor to the owner to the architect, and it's all his same signature. So this piece of paper gives me nightmares a little bit, to be honest. But that's how we have to act, and it's a big, big responsibility to be able to sign this document, however many times he does it, in order to ensure the architecture that we talked about initially is delivered the way we want it to be delivered. And it's a weight that I think everyone has to feel comfortable with if you're looking to work with us. We carry a lot of baggage and neighborhood inspiration to make sure that we're part of the community that we work and live in. So we're also really selective. The graph on the left is the potential projects that we've looked at, which is, it's got to be at least 500. And the one on the right is the projects that I've been a part of in the 13 years that I've been here. So we have a really, really selective sort of timeline about what's important to us at the moment, what's feasible, what we're interested in, what we want to see in the city. Is there a gap somewhere? Is there a type of architecture that we're interested in pursuing? And we'll flush out lots of different iterations of potential projects on top of executing the ones that are in process. We even created our own software because Zillow and StreetEasy weren't that helpful of tools, to be honest. So we have this full tool called Site where we can take notes about FAR, bulk, all of the real estate terms that get us to a point where we want to say go and sign on the dotted line. It's been really, really interesting to see some of my colleagues use this, and it's not only for Raleigh projects, but as people start thinking about creating their own real estate projects themselves, it's a really nice entry point to how real estate works in the city. This is a general map of where our projects have been over the last 12 years or 13 years. The red box is our office. This is John Street. This is 185, 168, Dumbo townhouses, 192 Water, and this is the alloy block that we've been working on for the last 10 years. So everything is literally within a 5-minute walk in Dumbo, and we're a little bit spoiled now that it's 25, feels like a very long commute to our closest site. That's kind of the way that we've always wanted to work. It felt really disingenuous to start thinking about doing design in places that we weren't familiar with. And since everyone, referring back to the employee list, lives and works in the neighborhood, it feels the most generous and genuine to work on buildings that you're a part of that you can see every day, which brings a level of responsibility because, shit, I really don't want to mess this up. I really want to walk by this project and be happy with it. So we selectively have been Brooklyn-focused over the last 13 years. And as our projects in scale have evolved from smaller jewel boxes in Dumbo to larger sort of master plans in downtown Brooklyn, we're trying to incorporate these 3 main aspects into our mission statement, which is we want to create a beautiful Brooklyn, an equitable Brooklyn, and a sustainable Brooklyn. And all 3 of these things are meshed together at all moments in time. So each individual decision that goes into anything we do, we talk about what it means to these 3 pillars. So it's a nice bar, and it's a little bit intimidating to want to be all these things at once. But if you don't try, I don't think you'll get anywhere close to attaining the goals that we've set out for ourselves. So it's a nice bar chart to figure out where our priorities are going to lie. And lastly, as just a general introduction, my boss AJ likes to say that we don't make cupcakes. We can't throw them out if we make a bad batch. We are making architecture in a major metropolitan city that is part of the urban fabric that we exist in ourselves. So taking the time and the care to create buildings that we are really passionate about, and hopefully the community is passionate about too, is imperative and the most important thing to us as a company. Yeah, speaking of AI, this was made in AI, whoever you guys were afraid of it. So a couple of works, I might blast through a couple of these things. 4 things that I want to go over. The scales vary. We get smaller and then bigger. Dumbo focused, obviously, and the last one is the alloy block. So starting small. This is 185 Plymouth. This is a loft renovation that we started right when I began my job in 2012, 2013. And our office is actually right here. So we set up a camera. If you can see my mouse, right? Okay, cool. You can see the construction progress day to day. But it was a building that they'd been chasing a long time before I started, mainly because the site was so tricky. It's like 35 feet wide by 200 feet long, and with legal light and air and code compliance, it's really, really hard for a developer, a typical one, to understand how you would convert this building into residential property. But as an architect, it's super simple. Building acquired, this is kind of what we went over. It used to be a former Brillo pad factory, and someone who had just moved to New York City, Andy Warhol's influence was kind of inspirational for me. So getting to know the process of alloy as a young designer, we actually brought in a frequent collaborator named Oliver Jeffers, who's an artist and children's book author, who had done a piece for us at 192 in the lobby about a map of Dumbo. But also as a marketing exercise, we had him draw full-scale bedrooms and living rooms in his distinct sort of childrenish style to let people understand how big some of these spaces were. So we toured him through the site pretty early on, and this was my first exposure to real architecture. I was like using a laser for the first time and drawing in AutoCAD on a laptop that I didn't know what I was doing. I barely knew AutoCAD at that moment in time, so it was kind of daunting, and this place was a little haunted. But we toured Oliver Jeffers through, and he kind of came up with this insane tagline that is kind of true. These places were huge. So we used that sort of idea, childlike wonder, and a little bit of adult humor to kind of carry the theme through. And he created a really pretty logo that we started using in all of our branding and marketing material. But the first time that I ever had an architect or a designer collaborate with an artist that early on in the process, and it felt like super abnormal to me. It was always what I was interested in. I grew up watching Carolina and Duke and NC State, and all those colors and insignias meant a lot to me. And I never really thought about combining architecture and the brand sort of side of it, but it helps us create a storyline throughout all the projects that we were part of. There was a children's book that was pitched, which could have been really cool. We have to still reissue that print. And then a quick diagram of how we just initially tackled the project. We essentially just removed the whole section of the loft in the middle. I think it's a 30 by 30 cube, essentially just ripped it out and then created a vis-a-vis sort of situation on the interior of the courtyard. And then we also hired Richard Barnes to photograph the demolition. We obviously wanted to save the building, and he was in there every day for a couple of weeks trying to document the process, and it ended up being a marketing tool that we used at the end of it. So we're always kind of using the process as a way to tell the story, because there's no plaque outside of buildings. It's really hard for you to explain someone to people where you're like, it's about this, and this. And for us, you have to start creating that storyline early to get your facts straight, but also aim towards a target that you're wanting to design towards. This is a really cool photo of the courtyard being like completely renovated and taken out. This is the elevation on, what's the street? Plymouth Street, sorry. Yeah, all these are very confusing to me now. It's weird. This is an old project, actually. There used to be a bridge that linked the two buildings, so we made a cute little insignia that we talked to landmarks about. And this is a landmark district, so there's a lot of back and forth with them about approval process. And we actually went into the process with something pretty tame, where the penthouse additions on the tops of this building were relatively minimal and obscure, and you couldn't really see them from the street. But they actually asked us to get a little bit wilder with it, so we ended up doing a reference of a drawing of a water tower that used to be on the top. So they're a little bit funkier than the style that we're in currently, but it was the first time an agency told us to be wilder than we were. So it was kind of a fun exercise to listen to what they had to say. This is the interior of the courtyard, and our CEO Jared actually lives in the basement, in the courtyard unit. Yeah, we just call it the basement, to be honest. He lives down here in this unit, and he's been here since we finished the project in like 2014. Quick renovation, and then we kept all the wooden post beams and the columns, did as best we can to salvage as much brick as we possibly could. New concrete floors on this floor because there was a little bit of unevenness as soon as we started demoing the project, but it's a really simple sort of tackle that an architect would think of, but a developer might not, and we wanted to explore the possibility of what that might look like. It's another shot of his beautiful, he uses this for an outdoors movie theater for his kids. It's a fantastic space. And then we also had Oliver run through the marketing plans and understand like how you could instill the brand into things that we were handing to people and making them understand what the space could feel and be like. And it was always sort of the goal to use the photographs that Richard Barnes had taken and hand them out in a printed package to say welcome home. So a medium project. This is the Dumbo townhouses. It's a building acquired in 2013. It was my first ground up construction at Alloy. 5 individual townhouses, a really cool ductile concrete facade, contextual architecture, and it was designed better, not bigger. So this is where our developer hats were on, where the lot itself could have been designed with a whole bunch more FAR than we ended up going with. And this decision was made because Dumbo hadn't been a very big neighborhood as far as height is concerned. So contextually, in our heads as architects and developers, we made the decision to actually design smaller, and I think that's a little bit of a rare case where people would, a typical developer, not us, would probably try to build as big as possible, as quick as possible, but we went the opposite route and created a unique sort of place in Dumbo for townhouses, which are kind of rare, to be honest. A lot of it is loft conversions. So this is a new prototype that's of scale in the neighborhood that is mostly brick and concrete structured buildings. Quick diagram of how we related the concrete ductile facade with the surrounding context. Just using super simple ideas of sightlines and elevations to create our own super simple elevation that has a relationship and a dialogue with the surrounding architecture, which I think is a pretty important piece of how we design now. We don't really ever want to drop a spaceship in the middle of a new neighborhood. That's not what we're interested in. We think design happens in a little bit of a cute sort of nod to what's been there, but I also believe in creating something that could have been designed 50 years from now or 50 years ago, and you don't really know between the two, and that's kind of our happy place. Really pretty section of the building that we worked with a rendering company named By Encore, who worked with us a lot in the beginning of my tenure. The building itself is a little bit dark, and this is a This is a photo of 55 Pearl Street owner, and the contractor is also 55 Pearl Street Aller Construction. So the fluidity of what happens in our office actually happens on site as well, where we're both the owner and the contractor. This scale was perfect for us to test out what it would be like to be the contractor, and it worked really well. As we continued to grow in scale, it made less sense given our business model and the turnaround time and the projected timelines of the project. But it was our first foray into actually building it ourselves. We sold out before the project was complete. So yeah, the concrete ductile facade was built, the entire facade system was built to Passive House standards. I don't think we ever tested it, but we built with a consultant that to ensure sustainability of the project. And they're really, really thin, beautiful little pieces of concrete that taper out to, I think, like 1/4 of an inch back to 2 inches at the building face. And it catches light in a really interesting way. And also from the outside, it feels really cavernous and cold and a little bit like insular, but there's actually a whole bunch of light and sectional quality that allows natural light to come down vertically, sideways. There's a lot of mezzanine spaces, as you'll see here, above the second story, backyards. So as like intense and sort of, I won't say mean, but closed off as it feels, the interiors are really, really bright. It's a quick elevation on Water Street, and it's also a really popular neighborhood, so creating the elevation that closes off some privacy for the tenants because of the existing context across the street at the Triangle is this farmer's market every Saturday, which becomes sort of a hotspot for people in and around the city. We wanted to give them a little bit of a private experience in their homes. So large. This is 1 John Street. This was the first two were like a single and then a mixtape. This was our first studio album where we were trying to really like synchronize what it meant to be an architect developer and how do you do that at a bigger scale than we'd been exposing ourselves to. It was an RFP competition actually, so the first 2 projects we acquired, but this one was a full competition. I think it's one of only 2 buildings in New York City that are within a park, this one being in Brooklyn Bridge Park. 42 residential condos, a Brooklyn Children's Museum annex, a restaurant space, and it's our first foray into public art installations that happen in between phases of the project. So it was a vacant site. It used to be a Con Edison plant that you could see in the back here. It used to be an extension of that, but it had been vacant for at least, I think, a dozen years before the park decided to extend what they had been constructing on the southern end of Brooklyn. So this would be the last stop of Brooklyn Bridge Park or the entry point, depending on where you're coming from the F train on York Street or the AC on the other side. And the idea of the gradient started to become a thing in our office when we were designing for the competition. It's a really unique spot to be in the city. You don't really get the opportunity to design on the waterfront all that much. And also it's an opportunity to see sunsets that you rarely get to see in the city in general. So we created a full RFP package, bound a book, and through the process, while we were designing, the views at the top of the building were actually worse than the views in the bottom because of the Manhattan Bridge coming so close to the site. The park would open up to the bottom 4 or 5 stories of 1 John Street, and it would close up with sound attenuation happening from the subway right across the street. And it's our first foray into a partnership with a public organization. We actually decided to partner with Brooklyn Children's Museum as a part of the development. This is the simple sort of elevation that became a graphic that we would use throughout the process, but also it's really a subtle sort of play on what architecture can be without standing out too much, but it's a subtle hint at what we like to do in the office design-wise. The bricks even gradient out, so they start bigger and flatter at the bottom, and at the top of the building itself, they become slimmer and chunkier. So we really carried the idea of gradient from the very, very minute detail to the overall scheme of the project. And these are some of the initial renderings, and there's pretty much no difference between what we proposed and what we delivered, which is a really important part of what our company does, is keeping promises. This is the entry point from John Street to the new addition of the Brooklyn Bridge Park that was soon finished after this building was delivered. And this was the BCM space. This was my first time designing anything that wasn't residences, and we collaborated with the team at BCM to provide a space for children that would be free to the public after school, before school, and throughout the day in a full summer camp. So as part of the development agreement that we proposed was we would essentially donate this space back to the park to be free for use for anyone who wants to come and visit and have their kids play with discovery toys and things they might not have at home, and also be an entry point to the park for the kids. This is the final elevation, which is strikingly similar to the first photo that I showed you. And then the intermission of it, projects take a long time, right? Like architecture is a famously slow profession, and especially at the scale that we've found ourselves in the last couple of years. So it's our first foray into what we could do to enliven the site in those 2 to 3 years that construction may or may not be taking place. This is a really famous art installation by Agnes Dennis, the Wheat Field in Lower Manhattan in the 80s. We sort of wanted to pay homage to this by not only working with the local artist, but also calling attention to the community that something else was coming to the site. There's probably nothing worse than a tower or a building of any sort just popping up out of the ground next to where you live or where you work without knowing what's coming. So it acted as two things, a real public art installation that we allowed everyone to come through the summer before real construction started, and also a point where we could reference to say, oh yeah, our project's coming there in 2 years, but you should check the pasture out before it comes. So we collaborated with this artist named Andrea Reynosa. She lives upstate and is a local artist and activist, and she works as a land artist. She proposed a red clover field that would clean the soil that was about to be repurposed to plant the new vegetation that the park was going to use by Michael van Valkenburg. So it was kind of a duality of things. We stripped the site clean of what was there left over at the Condensing plant, and then we planted a whole field of clover that was open to the public, and it started to bloom about midway through the summer. And it was really, for me, it was the first time I'd ever even touched architecture in some form of way as art, but this was a real collaboration between a design firm and a local artist that we really respected. A little shot of a honeybee pollinating one of the plants. And then we also brought goats in to clear the pasture afterwards. We actually own these goats now because people were a little upset they might be slaughtered in the next. It was a farm, so we didn't own the goats, but we saved them. They live in upstate New York. They live a wonderful life. I hope they're still alive. But yeah, it's just a funny moment. One of them escaped. You know, there's things that you can't really control. He ended up running into a bodega, and I had to chase after him with 3 of my colleagues. But it's just a fun little exhibition of what is possible in architecture and development. You don't have to always be so opaque. And I think bringing people to a site that's going to be for them and they live next to, it's an important piece to start talking to them earlier rather than later. So as that was going on and I was chasing goats, we were finalizing the AutoCAD drawings and the separation of spaces. Typical floors are only 4 per floor, and that was due to the fact that we wanted every unit to have a view. These 2 on this end face the Manhattan Bridge and the waterfront this way. These are all facing towards down Midtown Manhattan. And this unit actually is where one of the other partners in the company, AJ, lives. He's got a view of downtown Brooklyn as well. So there's just a super simple sort of fluidity to the floor plan. There's only 42 units, so it's super boutique and small and jewel boxy. But we wanted to keep the architecture itself super duper clean and minimal while not making too much noise, but also becoming a backdrop for activity and daily life on Brooklyn Bridge Park. And these are some of the finished photos. I can't take entire credit for that perfect reflection of the Manhattan Bridge. That's a happy accident, to be honest. We knew that might be a possibility, but I don't think anyone really realized that this would be such a striking sort of view that you'd have when you approach the building from Brooklyn Bridge Park. And there's a nice duality. We really are interested in using brick to keep the architecture contextual. The other submissions kind of strayed away from that, from what I saw at least, and I prefer architecture that's trying to blend in as much as possible while being, referential and pushing architecture in a different sort of direction than you would otherwise. This is a shot of another bridge reflection, and this is like showing that it's actually in the park. There's ADA ramps that swoop all around the lobby, so the lobby space can be filled with residents. The BCM space, which I think now is a public library, can be filled with kids, and the corner of the restaurant here. So this whole sort of part of like this plinth that it's sitting on is a really like active zone, especially for people who live in Dumbo. But it's in the summertime you can't really move around all that much. But it's a really like privilege to be able to design something that'll appear in movies and photos and quinceañeras and people's weddings, and it's really cool to be part of people's stories without actually knowing them. We also worked with a couple of local architects and designers to finish the building. Situ Studio, which is kind of a funny naming sort of thing. They're a small firm in Brooklyn. They actually designed these panels for us. And the lobby desk, which is also a gradient because we couldn't help ourselves. That's reclaimed rubble from the Brooklyn section of the Brooklyn Bridge that they were tearing down. So we reclaimed it, designed a wire cage, a brass cage to create a gradient at the lobby desk. And the panels themselves were a reflection of the waterfront, them trying to use salt and aggregate and melting it in certain ways with wax to get a shimmery sort of effect that as you come home really like creates a duality between home entrance and the water that you see as you enter through the lobby space. This is one of the units, so they're really pristine views. It's almost like living in an old school sort of factory building, clean punches. The windows vary in size as you go up the building. So this is on the second floor. These things are massive. They were, I think, engineered in Germany, finished in China, and then shipped to us. So these things are beasts, and they're motorized. So each individual panel has its own like operation that you can press a button and the thing starts to awning out. But the difference being it's still a massive window on the top. That's a bigger window than most apartments have in New York City on the right-hand image. But we wanted to make a clean experience that was both perceptible from the inside and the outside, and there was no tricking going on. It was a clean sort of modern take about what it means to live in a new age sort of loft space. And then the BCM we finished too. So the senior director of our company, of marketing, is Tara Maroka, and she's the one that actually took over this space. So in a traditional sort of development and architecture firm, I don't think a real estate specialist would be designing and executing construction of a project that was a public-facing museum, but she took on the task, and she crushed it. It's still a really, really nice space. A different owner now, or different tenant, but it was a public piece of real estate that we started thinking that we wanted to do more of this. The first couple of projects are exercises in architecture and development and how you can be clever about solving problems. But seeing this and executing it and working with people outside of our company who are interested in the greater good of Brooklyn as a whole was really important to us. So we took this experience and for the next one that you'll see, kind of put it on steroids. And the final slide is a really, really pretty quiet image of the building from the Brooklyn Bridge Park proper. So XL, this is the main thing we're working on. So it's been 10 years. And if you told me I'd be working on a project for 10 years when I was 25, I'd probably tell you I'd quit. But it's been a really, really eye-opening and really fun and challenging and gnarly. Sorry, I say gnarly a little bit too much, sorry. Really, really just different experience. And this is the alloy block, and this is a photo that was taken a couple of months ago. We're almost done with the first phase, but I'll walk you through what it is. So it's a mixed-use city block in downtown Brooklyn. It's a ULURP-approved master plan, a two-phase construction, a massive public and private partnership agreement, 1 million square feet, and of course, a partridge in a pear tree. So in comparison to what we had been doing previously, this is the most ambitious thing that any of us have ever undertaken. But like I said before, the exposure to creating public program and not private program with the BCM space, we found too much satisfaction in that, and we wanted to make a bigger impact on the city that we were living in rather than designing, albeit super duper nice and inspiring pieces of architecture to us at least. We wanted to expand our horizon to be touching more than those few people in a select neighborhood. So this is the alloy block. The Alley Block is 5 buildings, old and new, that provide residential, educational, office, cultural, and retail spaces for the people of downtown Brooklyn. Brooklyn is the nation's 4th largest city, and I think we actually might be the 3rd one now. We're neck and neck with Chicago. The Alley Block is on Flatbush Avenue, adjacent to BAM, Atlantic Terminal, and the city's 2nd largest transit hub, and the newly finished Barclays Center. The Alley Block downtown preserves and repurposes historic buildings, which is a really important piece to us as architects. The Alley Block also creates 2 public schools that are built in the center of the block that would be essentially free to the city. We were actively donating these 2 parks that would be funded by the residential towers that we would design adjacent to those things. So it's 0 cost to the city at all. The Alley Block downtown has 2 mixed use towers that respond to the triangular geometry of the site and respect historic structures. And it combines offices for 1,000 people, 850 homes, which is insane, 2 schools for 800 students, and retail spaces. The Alley Block will be built in 2 phases, and we are very near to finishing the first phase. Should be any day now, to be honest. School opens in September, so we only have a month left. And the Alley Block includes the first all-electric skyscraper, the first passive house schools in New York, and at ground level, there'll be public gathering spaces that are accessible to all. So that is really, really intense to me. Having only designed something that was about 120,000 square feet, we're talking about 1 million and different partnerships that go along with that. But we felt like we were best suited to accomplish that together with the city and the Department of Education and ECF, which is the Department of Education's development arm. We really wanted to create an impactful sort of lasting master plan. But why do we need another development? And we went through a ULURP process, which is, I'm not sure if it's New York specific, but it is a uniform land use review procedure where specific blocks or tax lots are assigned zoning, and you can petition to the city and community boards to upzone that block via a public process. So we took that initiative, and this is the timeline of what we've been working with since 2015. Started the block assembly early 2015 to 2017, started designing for ULURP, and we successfully were awarded an FAR substantially more than what the zoning law was required to afford, and it was one of the biggest ULURPs in Brooklyn's history. We made the decision to go all electric around 2020, started construction just post-COVID. Maybe some people had some vaccines in 2021, and then phase 1 is just about to be complete in the present. And there's all sorts of things happening along that timeline as well, but the most important part is the community aspect of the thing. Robbie wasn't lying when he said that one of my coworkers handed out his cell phone to people that were either excited, concerned, wanted to have their questions answered about what the project was about, when it was coming, who it was for, when it was coming, what they should expect. So opening our door to everyone that was impacted by the project itself was really important to us. Like I said, I'd rather have the knowledge of what's coming than have someone just plop something on my doorstep and say, here, do you like it? Well, it's here anyways. And it was a really collaborative experience with architects, principals, PTAs, city agencies. There wasn't a single sort of like entity that we didn't work with to get this project sort of off the ground. The project itself is in sort of a weird part of Brooklyn where brownstone Brooklyn meets downtown Brooklyn. We initially started collecting sites in 2015 and 2017, and the DOE had an existing school that was on the site that it's the only school in New York City that is dual language Arabic speaking, but the building itself was built in 1890, and it has no cafeteria, or no gym, no ADA access. The walls are, unsuitable for kids to learn and play and be kids in that space. So there was definitely a need for us to understand what the context was to the sites adjacent. So we were selected via an RFEI that the ECF, which is the Educational Construction Fund, is in New York City, and they build schools without NYC capital, and they leverage existing DOE sites, and they work in areas of need. So this student body that couldn't have been more than like 30 or 40 kids in a school that could have housed, I think, at least 200, the facility wasn't appropriate for them to continue. So in that process, we said, we will deliver you 2 new schools at no cost to you at all. The phasing of the situation was you stay in the old school for now. As soon as the new school is built, we move those kids over to the school, and then we take over the historic buildings that were once schools and we'll repurpose them for phase 2. So it's a brand new school, 2 of them. One is KGIA, Khalil Gibran International Academy, and then the other one is the Elizabeth Jennings School for Bold Exploration, which is an elementary school that will open its doors in September as well. There's also a whole bunch of other things that we tried to tackle with the master planning. Affordable housing and housing in general is in desperate need in New York City. There's a severe rent burden sort of analysis happening where I think it's some insane stat where like 50% of New Yorkers spend at least 40% of their paychecks on just rent alone. And there's a definite need for not only market rate housing, but for affordable housing. And for the first phase, we delivered 44 units, and we had 107,000 applications for just 44 units. So there's definitely a need. There will be more to come in phase 2, but it's a start, and we wanted to be a part of the solution and not the problem, because the other way of doing this, it could have been just a as-of-right condo building where no one benefits. But with this newly approved ULURP master plan, we could start tackling all these problems that are inherent to the city, but also the industry at large. These are all the transport options that you have that are walkable from the site. So it's extremely dense. The only other subway station that's bigger than this one is Times Square. So there's an obscene amount of transportation options, and Long Island Railroad that connects Long Island with Brooklyn and the city at large gets off right at Atlantic Terminal, and we're right across the street from that. And then this is where the cell phone thing comes in. These are all the meetings that we had over a year and a half, and I'm sure this list is probably 4 or 5 times longer than it is currently on the screen. But our office almost turned into like a town hall every night. We had people from neighbors to the PTA to the YWCA that was across the street to council members, all trying to understand what we could do together to make the block as successful as possible. So opening our door, it became almost like a design by neighborhood and not design by committee. It was really important for us, for the people who live in the neighborhood, to have a say about what's going on and how we make decisions in our office. So there were some like real things that the community had concerns about, and we solved those problems with them. There's no parking on the block at all to ensure sustainability, but also it's just no one has a car in Brooklyn. There's no need for one. We relocated some of the school entrances. There's no loading on the street. They had a real say in architectural input as well, street wall conditions, setbacks, and bulkhead design, all things that sound very like minimal, but those are real active design decisions that generally architects make. But opening the doors to people who are locals, for us, kind of was like a fun little charrette with people who had no experience in design, but knew what they wanted to see on their block. So it was a really collaborative sort of back and forth between people who went to architecture school and people who were interested in it and interested in the things that were next to them. And also sustainability, which is a no-brainer, obviously, where industry and materials and transportation, all of these things add up, but building operations is a big one. And the city had been pushing for Local Law 97, which is a carbon cap on buildings above 25,000 square feet. So we wanted to be ahead of that, and that's when we started introducing the idea of all-electric systems for the first tower. And then the actual program itself was contextually located. So BAM is right across the street, which is our Brooklyn Academy of Music. The high school was adjacent to that. A cultural center would be adjacent to that. We chose the quieter streets for the lower school and the residential entrances to create different sort of experiences for those using the block across the site. And at the same time, we put the John Street pasture sort of idea on steroids here also, where the block kind of became a canvas for local artists. We worked with Katie Mers, who is this really cool like painter, glyph, architectural installation artist that she would sit at the site, interview people, and get their stories and start making sketches about their lives. And that would collage over, weeks and weeks and weeks and turn into this really insane sort of like public art installation that was up for, I think, about 2 years before construction had started. So it was a really like small idea that turned into a big one, and it changed the landscape of the corridor, which had been sort of a not dead zone, but it was just a lot quieter and less dense version of what it is today. We also used the construction siding sort of experience that you find in New York all over the place, and overhead protections are kind of an eyesore for everyone. So we actually ran our own RFP to small architecture firms. This firm called Tarerken One, which is a Guatemalan and New York City-based firm, and they completely renovated and redesigned the idea of what a construction fence could be, and it created almost like a mini sort of backdrop performance center that we've been using for public events over the last like handful of years. So this is this is one of the jazz festivals. We had a gas band rally out front when Local 97 was being initiated. We also donated space to the buildings before we demolished them to start actual construction to Recess, which is a program that is for at-risk youth and gives them the opportunity to explore the arts in a different way and steer them clear of potential incarceration. And it was a really fun sort of, I think we were there for like a year or so, and it was just a really collaborative, sort of fun, weird experience that I think we want to do more of, and we had the space to do it, so it was important to give people an opportunity to express themselves in ways they hadn't before. We also host cultural kickoffs in the fall where people bring their cultural backgrounds and display where they're from. And New York City is a very diverse place, so we wanted to create an environment that was welcoming to that. And yeah. We also have Earth Day events where we have people drop off their old technology for free plants. That leads us to the actual architecture, and that was all just fun stuff. That was just pieces of the pie. This is the main event, I guess, is what we've been focusing on architecturally for the last 6 or so years. It's New York's first all-electric skyscraper. The system itself is actually pretty straightforward. It's not a complete departure from how a gas system would work, but instead of using gas, it's all electric, which is a sustainable way of pursuing architecture towards the future. And now that Local Law 97 is enacted, we won't be having to worry about having to switch systems, which a lot of the developers in the city are now asking for delays on when they can enact a whole new system to be implemented in their own buildings. We also wanted to be respectful of the architectural design in the neighborhood. This is the silhouette of the Williamsburg Savings Bank Tower, which was the only tower really in Brooklyn for as long as I can remember. When I first moved there, it was the only thing that you could really see from a very far distance. We wanted to pay respect to that. It's almost the exact same height, and it starts to play with setbacks in a sort of a modern, minimal way, but there's a real dialogue between the two things, and as you walk around our new tower, it frames the old tower in a really like fun and flattering sort of way. This is a shot from the air with both of the buildings in context together. This is what I'm talking about when you frame it. The building itself is actually a 60-40 window-to-wall ratio. It feels super glassy, but in actuality, it's super high-performative with triple-pane windows and operability throughout for all the residential apartments. This is a shot back from, call it our office, if you're coming towards the site. And the stepping, actually, when the sun hits it in the correct sort of angle, all three of those volumes are different shades. So the gradient idea that we explored at John Street is in a physical sort of expanded version at the Alloy Block. And this is what it looks like over Atlantic Ave, which is the second biggest thoroughfare behind Flatbush Avenue. And each individual facade piece, as you move up the building, in the 4 volumes, they twist and turn to catch light differently. So there's different moments of the day where there might be a slight sort of sun reflection that you might not expect, and it feels like the building is actually sort of moving. In the interiors, this is actually an affordable unit. There's no difference between the affordable unit finishes and the market rate unit finishes. Exposed concrete ceilings, keeping the columns exposed. We wanted to keep this thing as raw as we possibly could, while minimally detailing the window and facade experience. Just a shot looking over greater Brooklyn. Back towards the kitchen, the famous induction cooktop that Twitter lost its mind over for a couple of years back. All the appliances are electric in the building, and we actually have had people seek out the project to rent here because we're using induction cooktops. And it's not really new in Europe. They've been using it for a very long time, but in New York City, it's kind of like a novel sort of experience, and I'm excited to see how people react to them. And to top it all off, I'm actually moving in myself. This is my baby daughter, and she's super happy there, and I can't wait to get her into a new apartment because my place is gnarly. But yeah, it's also a testament to how many projects have I shown? I've shown 4, and there's someone living in all of them that has designed them. So we're not just saying that these are really, really nice things. We also want to live in the things that we were a part of. So it's kind of a full circle moment from designing weird stuff in college in Brooklyn to having a baby daughter who can experience what her dad was a part of is super special to me. And I don't want to cry, which is fucking weird that I'm doing that. But these are all renderings that we do in-house. Unfortunately, I think we just got the marketing photos of the amenity spaces today. I didn't have time to upload them, so I'll send you guys WeTransfers if you want. But yeah, lobby experience is super minimal and reduced. We wanted to keep a super simple color palette. Downtown Brooklyn is a kind of a hodgepodge of weird architecture, and creating a sort of seamless experience throughout all the amenity spaces is a no-brainer to me, but everywhere else has this very like weird, clunky mid-2000s energy, and we wanted to be as far away from that as possible. We also signed our first lease with Yafa Cafe, which is a Yemeni coffee shop down in Sunset Park. So that'll be their second outpost, and we're really excited about it because the coffee is delicious. But also they're promoting a culture that very few people in Brooklyn are familiar with. And I think they were telling us when we were initially in talks with them that the country of Yemen invented coffee. So we're excited about having that open up in the next couple of weeks. So it's an amenity for the building, but also giving space to people who we think deserve it. Workspace on the right. We have this weirder grow room on the left where it's a tech-free, so one of our partners is kind of a botanist and loves plants, so we dedicated an entire room to that. It's also a really cool sort of like climate charged space with big fans, the company Big Ass Fan. We have like 4 of those in there. Hanging plants, and there's potting stations, so it's kind of a removal from the hectic nature of living in New York City. And there's a shot of the workspace here, or the lounge space. And we also have a pool upstairs, which is kind of scary. We haven't built anything that tall before, and I'm afraid of heights. So the ride up the side of the elevator for me was kind of a daunting task, but I think it'll be worth it once I can ride a real elevator. That trickles down into like fun things that we've done too. I was playing around with 3D models of plugs, trying to figure out how we could use that as some sort of like branding sort of opportunity and to tell the story to people who are unfamiliar with all electric systems. So Jared walked by my desk and was like, "What is that?" And I was like, "I think we should build a big plug." So we did. It was manufactured down the street in the Navy Yard. The company that we worked with does all of like Nike's installations and Kim Kardashian's skin stores, so they knew what they were doing. So when I sent over the model, they're like, "Cool, we've done in 2 weeks." And I was like, "Okay, that's awesome." And then we called our construction team at UAG being like, "Hey, do you have a crane on site still? Because we need to lift a 1,000-pound plug to put on top of the terrace space." And they're like, "Yeah, we can make that work." So everyone kind of came out for it. It was a little bit of a spectacle. And it's been on the building now for like, it's weirdly sort of a marker. Now people say like, "Oh, is it the building with the plug?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that is the building with the plug." So it's a fun sort of exercise that we like to do in the office. Sometimes it becomes physical, sometimes it stays in people's computers, but this one was one of the funner ones that I was a part of. You can't have a brand without t-shirts, so we started making the all-electric t-shirt company, giving them out to the construction team as well, and we we designed them for moms and dads, people with kids. So it was a whole like family sort of experience. We got really, really close with all of our consultants. We don't see any real like division between who we are and who our consultants are. We're all a part of the same team. And even our construction manager, UAG, and a handful of people at our office went to a Army boot camp together to like get to know each other really, really well, bunk beds sort of thing. But I was not involved in that part. I don't know why. They probably thought I didn't want to sleep in a bunk bed. But yeah, to build the team bonding experience is actually a really important part of architecture. And I don't think you get that exposure as a young professional. Being able to communicate with the people who are actively building the things that you think should be built is a really important part of making good architecture. And I think creating that sort of environment and atmosphere where we trust each other the same way I trust people in my office, I trust that they're going to be building to the design specs that we've provided to them. And then that gets into the New York City's first passive house schools. How are we doing on time? Am I like taking forever? Sorry. Passive house schools, sorry, I'm not flipping through them that fast. This is the first ones in the city. Like I said, a high school and a lower school on State Street. Renderings we did in-house. Again, the photos are coming, just not quite yet, but it's a really amazing design. We actually hired ARO, Architecture Research Office, to do the design. We thought that it was unintelligent of us to try to dedicate that much time to design a school in a space that we had no experience in designing. So we ran a mini RFP between Gensler and ARO, and ARO won out with a strategy that we felt was aligned with what we were trying to do at the Alloy Block. Brand new gym that'll double as an auditorium. It's open after hours once it's open, so people can use it in the neighborhood for plays or community board meetings, things of that nature in their local communities. This is the entry on Flatbush Ave. So yeah, all these renderings were done in-house in collaboration with ARO to make sure we were getting it right. And that's a quick photo of the detail shot that they're almost done with. So school's opening in like 3 weeks. And on top of that, we also did the branding for them. These New York City schools are really intense systems to be in. There's not a lot of time for the staff to figure out what their school should be like on an internet or Instagram or public presence. So we took it upon ourselves to fly through a quick branding exercise with both principals to deliver them a brand new website, catchphrases, slogans. We hired photographers to cover all of their graduation ceremonies. And we made pamphlets to get new students to start coming to this school because they historically had been very low on student count. So now that they have enough space to house, I think, 400 kids, they should be able to up their admission numbers. They have T-shirts too, obviously. And then this Elizabeth School of Bold Explorers did the branding for this. It's PS 456. Elizabeth Jennings is kind of New York City's Rosa Parks, actually, and I actually didn't know this story at all. But she did not give up her seat on a streetcar in the late 1800s. So the school is named after her. And she ended up starting her own school soon after that. It's also a Spanish-speaking and lower-income preference school. So kids that might not have the same opportunities as people in affluent neighborhoods will be going to this school in a mix of incomes and people and backgrounds. And to cap it all off, keeping our promises is a really important part to us. This is a rendering that we did a handful of years ago, and this is what it looks like today. So we're delivering on everything that we're saying, which I think for me as just a person trying to be a good person, that's the most important part of what I do as my job and occupation. Telling someone to their face, hey, yeah, we'll figure that out. This is what it's going to look like, and then actually being able to deliver that a handful of years later and through a very high wire act of, is this going to work? To be able to say that we did it, and we haven't done it, we're only halfway through, but to this point, we've delivered on every promise that we try to keep. Yeah, so recap for this project, 2 new schools, more land for schools, 200 permanently affordable houses, equitable development. It's the first LEED community in Brooklyn, 3,000 new jobs, 0 city capital dollars, and $240 million of public benefit. And at the beginning of the project, we created an equity plan with an equity officer that we hired and one of our now team members, Liz Graham and Ed Brown, to keep us in check, to make sure that we were delivering on everything that we're saying. Maybe we can exceed some of those goals. And at the end of it, we achieved 64%. Remember, we're only halfway through this project. We achieved 64% of them, exceeded 6, 10 are still in process because there's a second phase, and 19 is a second phase as well. So we're trying to keep a Brooklyn-centric mindset while being a good neighbor, a good person, trying to create good spaces for good people. And I know that's a lot of good, but there's a lot of bad in the world also. So we're trying to be the best architects and best developers and best community members that we possibly can be. And then our first big press release, which was super exciting, was the New York Times. So Brooklyn scores with the first all-electric building in New York City. And that's something that I think we had envisioned might happen 10 years ago, but now that we're like here in the moment, it's a little like humbling, and we only want to keep doing work of this scale and of this impact. And I think it can be a model that other developers, other architects can start implementing in their own sort of workflows. So yeah, better development, and that's Alloy development. That's it.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you, Ben, for that incredibly inspiring talk. Can we get another round of applause for Ben? We will be opening the floor up for questions, so just raise your hand and I will bring the mic to you. Any hands? Hands, okay.
Good evening.
Hey, I can't see you, but okay.
It's another amazing day in paradise. My superhero name is Mama Kai. I like to let people know that because I found my superpowers being a mom and a student of my young black male superhero. Thank you. I'm a little emotional.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. And I just want to applaud you for being willing to be vulnerable, have those tears for your daughter, because being a dad being a parent is an amazing experience. So just kudos to you for that. Because we've been here in Raleigh, like one of my questions is about what you've felt from what you've seen being on the tour with the various types of architecture, the structures, the different types of houses. Because haven't had that experience of having people come into our neighborhoods, be considerate about the needs that are here, be mindful of the neighbors. I've been to community meetings which are required by the city where developers have said, where the neighbors have come in and asked, are you building affordable housing? Are any of your units going to be affordable? And they're like, no, And so I just kudos to seeing a need, feeling empathetic about the needs of the people in your community, and then fulfilling that need. That is like compassion by definition. And so I just celebrate that. But I am really curious about what you've seen and how it's made you feel as you look at the different types of structures. I feel like we've had so many people kind of bring California here and dump it in the midst of historically black neighborhoods and changing the whole face of the city with what is going on. So I just, just from an outsider's perspective and seeing all the different structures, what has been your perspective or your thoughts?
Yeah. Is this on? Cool. Thank you. Sorry. The crying thing was a lot, but I appreciate you appreciating me. It's a lot. I don't know. I'm familiar with Carolina pretty readily, so I'm not uncomfortable or haven't seen things that I didn't expect to see. But at the same time, for me, making place is about people in the room and not about the architecture. The architecture can be good or bad, but as long as there's a good vibe and good energy between people who you live and work with, that's, I think, where the answer lies, to be honest. I mean, every city has their own issues with trying to get enough affordable housing and trying to create new schools. But I think it's actually just asking an inward question, to be honest, about how can I make that decision to help to change? Not one person can do it, right? This is 10 years of, if I've had to ballpark it, 1,000 people as part of the collaboration, and some were designers, some weren't. But I think the lessons from the Alloy Block can be proliferated throughout other parts of the United States and the globe if you want to go that grand with it. But yeah, I'm not super familiar with Raleigh's, planning and where certain neighborhoods lie. I've only been here for a handful of hours, to be honest. But I do see that people are really, really nice. And I've met people of all different backgrounds just on the street. I don't know why I've been walking around in the 95-degree heat. But it's been really nice to talk to people who are from here. And kind of a compliment when someone asked me if I was from here, and I was like, cool, yeah, do I look like I'm from here? But I think that's kind of the answer, and it's less about the actual architecture and just starting a conversation. And I know that's not a non-answer, but you have to start somewhere, and it's not as easy as who's gonna do this for us? It's you have to be a part of the solution, and that comes from companies, from citizens of the city, from the state. It has to be a goal that everyone wants to achieve, and not just one group or this person or that company. It has to be a collective sort of experience, and I think that's what we were successful at the Alloy Block. Does that work or? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Any other questions?
Hey, thank you again. That was an incredible lecture, so appreciate it.
I'm not on. Am I on? I was very nervous, so I appreciate that.
No,
Thanks.
so good. I think I might have got my wires crossed too, but I think earlier in the lecture you were talking about the last project, the Allo development being maybe energy generation or I don't know if you said net zero or anything like that, but
all electric skyscraper, that one?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there was there any sort of energy production to go along with that as part of the project, or maybe any other sustainable features that you could talk to?
We're aiming to try to make this a carbon neutral tower. We're in active negotiations with people that I can't speak about publicly, but we're aiming for a really hopefully full carbon neutral site, and it's important to us to be sustainable moving forward with architecture. It was a simple decision for us, though, too, given the nature of how intense architecture and building can be on the environment. It felt like a mistake not to try to tackle it somehow. And if it was easy as our sustainability consultants at Thornton Tomasetti being like, you know what's super easy? Making a building all electric. Because no one would have thought of that in our office. We're like, we're just going to make a really pretty building with a lot of cool stuff in it for really good people. But the additional layer of sustainability, we're only focused on doing that from now on. Whatever technology that someone might find on Wired in our office, or whatever website that they're into, we want to hear all of those crazy things happening, and hopefully we can find a way to implement them into our architecture. I'm not an engineer, but when I heard all electric skyscraper, I was like, yeah, duh, why aren't we not doing that? So, yeah, I mean, it'll be hopefully a carbon neutral site for ever, and I think it will be. I'm just saying that because I don't want to lie, to be honest, but yeah, we're heading towards that way for sure.
I don't know much about kind of energy generation on a skyscraper. Is that like solar? Is this a combination of a lot of different elements?
There's plots of land in the city that generate via solar, and there's plots of land in upstate New York that are dedicated solar farms. So we've been trying to figure out how to best use that energy and bring it to our site. And the entire city, New York City's grid is going clean energy too. So we're going to be on the forefront of changing the environment, hopefully with them for the better, not the worse. Yeah. Thank you. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Oh.
I was a little intrigued by your combination of the different hats that everybody wears and how you work that out. I mean, I can't imagine how.
I still don't know either, to be honest.
How is and you see equitability? I mean, like, I know the COVID is shaking up the real estate market, the downtown real estate markets and stuff, but it used to be that the leasing agent leasing out a building made more money than the architects and engineers' fees combined for designing and building the building.
Yeah, broker fees are gnarly in New York City.
Aren't they? Yeah. I mean, like, how did you all work that out? I mean, it's like...
I mean, I think it was born out of wanting to be a one-stop shop. When you sell a project or you sell a condo, or in this case now that we're moving towards rentals, no one knows the product better than the person who designed it. So like as a part of the business model, it only made sense for us to want to be on all parts of public-facing interactions. So Tara and Jared and AJ, Tara specifically, does an outstanding job of being an architect and a leasing agent and a mom of 2 in Brooklyn. So she knows what it's like to be in the city looking for space that, she might know this unit might work better for you if you're in this part of your life, or this unit might work better. And having the knowledge just architecturally and design-wise is a really important part of how we communicate with people who don't or who aren't familiar with us. So she's like the nicest person in the whole world, but she makes the leasing part of things super duper easy. So she's a pivotal part of how we work. Is that all right? Cool. This part's easier than the lecture, by the way.
Hi, my name is Carolina. I am mostly wondering about all of the knowledge that you guys are taking into the extra large project, and if you guys are going to share that with the public, essentially, like how are you guys making it work?
How do you mean?
With it being all electric.
Yeah.
I think I'm thinking about that because I want that to be part of like everyone in every city. So I'm interested in like learning
Yeah, I'm interested in learning too. I'm not an engineer, so like, I'm sticking to what I know as far as like how the system works, and from what I understand, it's a super readily available system. It's just making the decision to go all electric. We are the first one, but I think it's the J.P. Morgan Tower or another bank by Norman Foster going up. It's the tallest all-electric skyscraper in New York City, so everyone's like grabbing for that like first, tallest, biggest, fastest sort of thing. But yeah, that system's, I think, readily available and been around. I think it's used in Europe pretty commonly, so I think it's just adapting it. We've been so dependent on gas for energy consumption and use that it just feels foreign to us, and it's just as simple as, is there a different way to do that, or what's a better way of doing that? Because I have kids now, and I want the forest not to be burning down, you know what I mean? Like it's a super simple like development and design and human decision. As far as the nitty-gritty of how it actually works, I'm definitely not the person to ask, and I wish I was, but I can hook you up with people that would know, for sure.
That would be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Are you serious?
I'm serious. I know we spent a lot of time together today, but you kind of downplay or sort of like find the humor in only doing 5 projects in 13 years, but the evolution of scale in a relatively like condensed amount of time is incredible, and the ability to sort of handle that scale as elegantly as you guys have is, you know, commendable. But I am curious, like, where is this evolution leading? Like, are you at liberty to talk about what's next for Alloy after the block's finished? Are you guys already planning another big project at that scale, since that's of interest?
Yeah, we have phase 2, which is in the deck, right? We have another piece of the block to complete, and that's just as big as the first one, right? Like, there's enough square footage in there. But globally, we only want to be doing things at this scale, and we were 4 people at one time, and my expertise was super limited. It was like, how do you make a cool-looking building and a cool-looking render, and how do you make people want to buy it and live there? Like, that is a very simple sort of thing, but as we've scaled up, we've also brought on people with expertise that I don't have, that Jared doesn't have, that my coworker Jeff doesn't have. We have people with backgrounds in scaled buildings who've worked at SOM and KPF and know the ins and outs of how to deliver that architecture. But at the same time, now that we went through this insane 10-year run of like not knowing what we were doing more or less, but trying to be a good person the entire time, we only find validation now in doing that and making people's lives better in the communities that they live, which happen to be right next door to where I live, better. And I want that too. I'm part of Brooklyn. I want my daughter to go to a good school like anyone else. So I think we're only interested in an impactful level as far as a city-urban sort of strategy. I mean, we're also architects. Like, I'm sure I'd want to design, not my own house because that terrifies me, but someone else's house at some point in the future. But I only foresee Alloy doing big, large, city-wide sort of projects. And I think that's all what we signed up for. I don't think we knew what we were getting into 10 years ago, but I do know it's the only thing we want to do moving forward. Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, okay.
That wasn't so easy, by the way. Thanks.
Hello.
Hey.
So I really appreciate the amount of art that is included in each project, and I'm wondering if that is something you sort of seek out when you start the project, or it's more of you find an issue and solve it with art.
It's always just having a pulse on what's important to us daily. I mean, again, we're all designers, and I have my own Tumblr blog, and I'm on, Cosmos, and not so much Pinterest because it makes me feel weird. But yeah, we're always looking for ways to to implement art. Especially because, like I mentioned in the lecture, architecture is really slow. And there's so many years of, vacancy where you're just like, what's going on there? Why is there scaffolding up for 7 years? And the land art one was a really sort of, novel experience we did. We're probably not going to be able to clear a site like that for that extensive period of time because it was with collaboration with the park. But we always want to incorporate someone's voice that we appreciate, preferably someone who's local, preferably someone who's trying to create work that is reflective of what we're trying to create, but also we're open to new things. And I think that for me, since we only do one thing at a time, without those little blips of insanity, like doing the plug, like the pasture, the work can become a little bit, the work will never be bad, but the excitement level does this more than it does this. And I think the art part is just a fun thing that we, personally, I think is an important and
invaluable part of how we envision projects. I wish we did the past year that I have a daughter now. I'm sorry to keep referencing her, but she's fucking 9 months old and she's the best. But yeah, it's it'll never stop for us. It's my favorite part, on top of other favorite parts. But yeah.
No more hands? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your questions and for coming out and supporting Real Matter and coming to the lectures. We will be continuing the fun tomorrow with another lecture tomorrow night at 6:30 with Brian Lee Jr. He has Colocate Design. He's based in New Orleans. Make sure to come out a little bit early for the NC NOMA reception at 6. Before everyone heads out tonight, we actually have a birthday in the room. I'm so sorry, Joao, but I've been tasked to make everyone sing
sick.
happy birthday to you. So here we go.
Yes. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Joao. Happy birthday to you.
Okay, have a great night. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks.
I'm gonna need on the basis. I'm gonna need in the basis.
Good night.
Sorry.